Good afternoon, Jeremy.
Well, I've upset Michael Heseltine. Good afternoon, Emily Carver, Conservative
Good
campaigner.
afternoon.
I met you last week in a corridor downstairs. How are you?
You did. It was lovely to meet you. I'm not sure you recognised me, though.
I've upset Lord Heseltine, you two. I took him to task because he said that 80,000 is not a lot of money to become an MP. I just said he might want to understand that, in the real world, 80,000 is a lot of money. Benjamin, Emily, welcome to the show. I talked then about how suddenly it's sleaze all the way. I think anybody with a brain cell is going to be gobsmacked / shocked by the Sunday Times article that says that if you give the Tory party £3 million, you'll become a party treasurer. Well, the last 16 have then gone to the Lords. Benjamin, your response, because this is going back to the 90s. And I think, I don't know what you think, pal, but the minute the British people smell corruption, the whole thing changes, doesn't it?
I mean, it's completely appalling. And I fear that Boris Johnson almost hopes that people look at this and say that it's MPs as a whole, which is one of the ways that he could get off the hook. And what's clear is that this didn't start with Owen Paterson and that investigation in the last 2 years, because those 16 Tory party treasurers go back through a series of leaders. And I think the idea that you have Neil Hamilton-style controversies and abuses of office going on, and yet this time, unlike back in the 90s, when at least John Major was humiliated and embarrassed and punished at the ballot box, this time we have a Prime Minister that when they debate that sleaze and what should be done about it, as MPs are right now in the Commons, he doesn't even bother to turn up. And regardless of whether you voted Tory or support the PM as an individual, I think that is a pathetic absence of leadership.
Well, you and I have not agreed on much, but I'm going to absolutely nail my colours to what you've just said. I think you are absolutely right, 1,000,000%. How he doesn't turn up today smacks of absolute guilt, Emily. Benjamin is spot on here, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. He should certainly be fronting this debate. I mean, it's on parliamentary standards and he's the Prime Minister. But it is hardly surprising that he's decided not to, considering his history with the Parliamentary Standards Committee. He's been very much accused, well, many times, over his, in quotes, over casual attitude to declaring his own personal finances, particularly over holidays and such things. But he previously wrote, a few years ago in the Telegraph about how it's so important that the public don't view politicians as being in it just for the money. And it's clear that at a point like this, where trust is low, I mean, it's the first time when the Labour Party have gone above the Tories in the polls since Keir Starmer took office.
This is the thing. I mean, Keir Starmer has said that Boris Johnson has just said this has damaged our democracy and given the green light to corruption. This is this is an own goal, I think, of gargantuan proportions. And Benjamin, I said to Heseltine, didn't respond very well, but in the 90s, the Tory party were in an unassailable position. Sleaze got Blair elected. If it hadn't have been for Sleaze, Tony Blair would not have had that landslide. And you can almost see from this unassailable 10-point position and being able to get away with it, you can see all Boris Johnson's distractors are now rubbing their hands, aren't they? I think Benjamin's frozen. Benjamin, have you frozen? Emily, you speak. We'll try and get Benjamin back. Don't worry. That's just, oh, look, I'm on twice. Emily, how? Oh, 3 times. Oh, I'm on 104 times. Oh, there's Emily on her own. How are you?
I mean, with all these things, I think it is fair to say that there has been corruption among both parties, both the opposition and the Tory party, but the accusations of Tory sleaze are strong and they certainly seem to be getting through to the public, if you take the polls to mean that. And I think we should, because, it's clear that the Prime Minister himself has had, controversy over finances. Remember Wallpapergate, that's still under scrutiny. Then there's also his various holidays that he's taken and hasn't, correctly put that across in his statements and so on. So I think, it was a massive mistake for the Tory party to defend Owen Paterson over his extracurricular activities. I
agree. And Emily, sorry, can I jump in because Benjamin's back? Just one thing. I want to jump because I've loads to talk to you both and I'm interested. I never thought I'd say this. The House of Lords. I don't and listen. I don't understand how, and I never have, if it makes me unpopular, sorry, how an unelected second chamber can change laws that 638 elected people that we voted for want to carry out. I don't understand that. And I don't understand, despite what Michael Heseltine says, how people have failed in their jobs, end up with a peerage and get paid £300 a day to sit on their backsides and do nothing. Benjamin?
Do you know, I think what use the House of Lords could bring has been abused by party politics and the big money machinery. Because I actually quite like the idea that experts in their fields, people with real world experience that have risen to the top of industries, that they can go and advise on the kind of laws that we make. People that would never, ever pursue party politics. And in a system like ours, you don't so much as become a councillor, chances are, without being in a party. But the problem is, it's just become a sort of cash for access machinery. You know, when you've got those 16 treasurers of the Tory party, doesn't that illustrate it? And Labour, of course, did similar things when they were in power. And so I think there should be rules to make that stricter rather than getting rid of the House of Lords.
Interesting. Emily? It's jobs for the boys and the girls now, isn't it? If you fail, you get one, or you buy your way in. That's not what it was meant for. Benjamin makes a great point, actually. You know, the people that can bring something to the table that haven't even begged or sold something for it, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
You know, I think I'd actually rather have hereditary peers than this lot of sort of political appointees. I mean, they're completely, as Benjamin Butterworth said, they're completely, there's so many cases for corruption when it comes to this. And it's something that has happened in successive governments with these appointments that are clearly politically motivated or are determined by the amount of cash that you donate to a party, it seems. And I'm not sure what the ideal reform would be of the House of Lords, but the current setup clearly isn't it isn't respected. And
I don't understand how you can have a prime minister that gets sacked and one of the last things they do is to give 25 peerages out to their mates who have all helped them. You know, Theresa May doled out all these life peerages to people who were a disaster. Let's move on. You probably know more about this than I do. I touched upon this morning, but I was busy taking the young boys out. That's my son's, by the way. M&S pronoun badges, a step forward or a step too far? He, him, his. M&S, David. He, him, his. Oh, God. Emily, let's start with you. God.
You know what I find troubling about this is not that people shouldn't declare their pronouns. I mean, people should be allowed to do whatever they like. It's the fact that M&S seem to be, in their own words, encouraging as many of their staff as possible to wear whichever combination of pronouns is right for them. Why on earth? Why on earth is an employer doing this?
But it's optional, apparently, isn't it? Isn't it optional?
It's optional, but from their choice of language, it's very much been sent as almost a diktat, insofar as they've said they want to encourage as many of them as possible. Why? That's not the job of my employer.
Is them the right word? Are you allowed to say them or they? I'm confused.
Pardon?
Are you allowed to say them? Honestly, I absolutely, I don't even understand this story. Benjamin, help me out. What's the story? What's the truth here, pal?
So they've issued badges which now have their pronouns on. They don't have to wear the badge with their pronouns on, but this is particularly useful for people who call themselves non-binary, which means they don't identify as a man or a woman. So they would be they/them, which is what you just referred to. For me, this is a good thing, especially given they don't have to do it. And so who are the rest of us to oppose people that wish to say if they were they/them? It's very useful because it saves everyone a lot of discomfort or embarrassment. But for me, this goes to a more fundamental point, that the idea that people who are cisgendered, born as they live the rest of their life, the vast majority of us, the idea that that it is some great burden on them. Well, on those people, imagine if you're born transgender and that you feel non-binary, the kind of challenges that you face in your life and going about your workplace and just trying to have the same opportunities and comfort that other people have, the burden's on those people. And I think this is a minor change that businesses and people that go into stores like M&S can make just to make things run smoothly. And
Emily, your response to Benjamin?
I can't help to sort of follow through this. It's not just a case of, you know, giving people the option. It's very much part of a movement to make pronouns and putting your pronouns in your email signatures and putting them on your badges. That's very much something that a lot of corporates and our own civil service have very much bought into. And I do worry about the compelled speech element of it, because, you know, as they've said, they're trying to encourage as many staff as possible to do this. And I would question why, because a lot of people don't actually buy into the sort of gender identity belief system, and they may have a very different belief system. They may think, you know, that sex and gender are one and the same, or they may believe that sex is immutable and so on, and they should be free to believe that. So I do worry that we're sort of making everyone conform to one philosophy, and it could actually be quite discriminatory rather than inclusive. So at the moment, when it's, you know, you can choose, fine, you know, people have their free speech, they can put he, she, they, them on their badge, okay. But I don't like this sort of active, you know, encouragement of staff to do it. I can just imagine that people would be accused of being transphobic if they were not to.
Benjamin, last word from you, my friend.
There's no such thing as a gender ideology. People, for as long as time, in all different cultures and incarnations of humanity, have not been male or female. The fact is that you need to recognize that and let those people live their lives. And if you don't think that people should say their pronouns, well, Emily, I'm talking. If you don't want to let people say their pronouns, well, why don't I call you he or him for the rest of the show, or every time I see you, and then see how annoyed you are?
I think that's very different from encouraging staff to wear a badge to show that, you know, if you called me he, him, and I corrected you and said I'm actually she, her, please, that would be absolutely fine. And that's a personal,
but that's just what the badge does.
That's a personal interaction that we might have. You know, encouraging all staff members to put the pronouns on their badge shows that that company is subscribing to a certain ideology that some people may find to be an imposition. Just as you may find it rude for someone to misgender someone, a lot of people will find it rude and an encroachment for them to have to put their pronouns on a badge.
I love having you two on this programme. Thank you as ever.